Hello, friends. Happy Tuesday. It's time for another episode of Tuesday Live at 5. This is Lena Gersa. I'm an independent Stampin' Up! Demonstrator from Cambridge, Ontario, Canada, where it is definitely feeling like fall today. I'm in my long sleeves, I've got my long pants on, and it is kind of drizzly and rainy, and then a couple of little moments of sun, and then more drizzle and rain. It's just one of those very fall-like days, which is kind of unusual over here in Southern Ontario. It's still August. We're not usually into fall quite this early, but honestly, it's a welcome relief after the crazy heat we've had this summer. So I don't mind being in my fall cozies today and coming to you live here on a kind of gloomy day here in Cambridge. So today, to brighten up this gloomy day, I am all about the gorgeous Sunflowers 3D embossing folder today. Yep, I'm featuring an embossing folder. I'm doing an entire video on one embossing folder. I don't think I've ever done that. But oh my goodness, this folder is so gorgeous. And there are so many cool techniques you can do with it. So I'm going to show you 3 different ways to use it. I've got a bunch more projects, and then I'm going to give you a little sneak peek of a promotion I'm running in September as part of the product Giveback that Stampin' Up! Is running in conjunction with the new catalog. So I'll talk about that at the end. But if you are joining me today, whether you're watching me live or on the replay, please let me know. Give me a hello and tell me where you're watching from. Let me know what the weather's like where you are. Are you feeling like fall, or are you still full on summer? Or maybe if you're watching in the South Pacific, it's starting to feel like spring. But let me know where you're watching from. And I'm going to flip to my desk while you are doing that and show you this beautiful folder. Here we go. Now it's hard to see because it's white on white. I'll put my hands behind it. This is the Sunflower 3D embossing folder. It's huge. It's one of our jumbo folders. This is what is it? 6 by 8.5 or 8 1/4. It's a very large folder, so you can do a half sheet of cardstock in one pass through the machine, and that's how I've been doing. Because if you make one, you may as well make 2, right? And it's not a repeating pattern. So this top part would make a beautiful card front, and then the bottom part makes a beautiful card front. But if you wanted to do one jumbo size card, you certainly could. So it's an absolutely gorgeous folder. It is an online exclusive that launched in July. Again, easy to miss when we have products launching at the beginning of summer here in Canada, but my goodness, this is such a pretty one, and I'm going to show you some fun things to do with it. Before I do, let me just see who's joining me here today. Oh, Susan's in Florida and her AC is out. Oh, Susan, here's hoping it gets fixed quickly. Hi, Crystal, welcome. Hi, Lauren, cooler in Philadelphia. Hi, Terry, Lake Erie, region of Ohio. Yes, you're in the same kind of weather we are. Hi, Jean, welcome. Hi, Laura. Hi, Charlie. Colleen. Hi, Lisa. And Jeannie K. Oh, you're just back from PEI. The island is beautiful. It's one of my favorite places to be. Love PEI. It's actually a place that my husband and I are seriously considering retiring to. Niagara Falls. Hi, Julia and Julie and Louise and Carla. Okay, we got the gang all here. I better stop talking and get to some stamping. All right, let's set this aside and we'll get to our first project. So I always like to do one that's quick and easy to start, and this one fits the bill. So this is a nice monochromatic technique, and I learned this technique is being called tooled leather. This actually reminds me of the carved leather pattern that my mom has on a saddle that she used to use. My mom was quite the horsewoman when I was growing up, and she has a beautiful hand-carved leather saddle, and this is very similar to the coloring and some of the detail that's on that saddle. So that's what inspired this card. So let me show you how to get that look. It's really not hard. So here is just a 4 by 5 1/4 inch piece of Crumb Cake cardstock. I've embossed it using the Sunflowers 3D embossing folder. And you can see this was part, where is this? Where do they connect? This was part of this sheet. I might have trimmed some of it off, so I can't line it up, but that's where it came from. I did one big 8.5 by 5.5 inch piece to start. And we're going to just start by doing some ink blending. We're just going to start with pecan pie. Now I've just re-inked both my pecan pie and my early espresso ink pads because I've been doing so much ink blending this week with this folder. So this is probably going to come on quite dark, but that's okay. So I'm going to start with my pecan pie. And I always like to start off the edge and come on, because you never know when you're going to get a big splooch or splotch of ink when you, especially after you've just re-inked your ink pads. Now, one tip, when you're inking your blending brush, don't do a tap tap like this. You're not going to get good ink coverage on your brush. Do a little swirl, and you're going to get much better coverage and more even coverage, so that when you apply it to your paper, you get nice even blending. So I'm coming on with my pecan pie. And the beautiful thing about this embossing folder is it really does have multiple layers of embossing. So some parts of the image look like they're behind other parts of the image, and that's where you get that 3D effect. Using the blending brush really adds to that 3D effect and really makes those sort of foreground elements really pop. All right. Hey, sister, how you doing? Oh, Facebook is still having issues. All right. I don't know what is up with Facebook lately. It's not liking my live streams very much. Thank goodness for YouTube. YouTube never lets me down. All right. So there we go. We have just simply added some color, just the pecan pie on the crumb cake ink. And you can see already that embossed pattern is really starting to pop, right? So pretty. I'm just going to hit a couple of areas again here. And then we're going to switch to the early espresso. In the early espresso, we're going to go lightly. We don't want to cover all of that pecan pie. What we really want to do is hit those areas that are most raised to really bring out the sort of depth of this embossed image. And I also just re-inked my early espresso pad, so it's coming on pretty dark here. I'm applying very little pressure with my brush because I do not want to end up with a messy splotch here. But you can see as I'm kind of dancing over the image, I am using almost no pressure, essentially the weight of the brush. But you can see how this flower is really, here, I'll hold this up a little closer. It's really tending to pop forward as opposed to this one, which I haven't inked yet. So it's easy to add more ink. It's not so easy to take it away if you use too much, right? So when we are, especially with a dark color like the early espresso, we are going to go with the less is more approach and add more as needed, rather than potentially end up with more than we want. I am loving the way this image is just popping here. See, I got a little splooch there. Not what we want. We're going to go nice and light. And by going nice and light, you'll notice that I'm not getting ink on my background. I'm only really hitting those sort of raised foreground elements. There we go. Isn't that pretty? Look at the way that just pops. Such a beautiful pattern. So we'll set this aside. I'm going to keep these colors out. We're going to need them again. And we are going to go ahead and add our twine. So there are a couple of products used on this card that are coming next week when the new catalog launches. One of them is this Early Espresso linen thread. So this one comes in a 2-pack, actually. There's Early Espresso and Old Olive. It's another online exclusive. So when the catalog launches on Wednesday of next week, you're going to want to make sure you log in and also check out the online exclusives, okay? Because there's a whole new batch of online exclusives, and oh my goodness, believe me, you're going to want to check them out. They are so beautiful. This twine is an online exclusive. It's part of a new suite, a new fall suite, which is absolutely gorgeous, which you are guaranteed to see in the next few weeks, because I am a fall girl and I bought all the fall things because I can't get enough of pumpkins and leaves and acorns and all those things that make fall so beautiful. So I'm just taking a double thickness of linen thread here and adding some glue dots to the back of my panel. I like to adhere my twine this way rather than wrapping it around my card front, because then I'm not wasting twine on the backside where nobody sees it, right? It just makes my twine stretch a little longer. So that is all I have to do. And then I'm going to go ahead and add this to my card base. My card base is Early Espresso cardstock. It's 4 1/4 by 11, scored at 5 1/2. Julia, I would use baked brown sugar rather than pecan pie, or rather than soft suede as a substitute. You could probably get away with soft suede, but it's got a little bit more of a greenish tint. So I would stick with baked brown sugar and early espresso. You'll get a very similar look to the pecan pie. Hope that helps. All right. So we're going to add a little bit of glue here. Now, I most certainly recommend using liquid glue with this very deeply etched embossing folder. The tape, first of all, using seal will tear your paper apart because the paper is very distressed. Running it through this embossing folder with all of the detail really stresses the fibers. And if you use seal, you're going to pull the layers of the paper apart. Okay. The other advantage using liquid glue is that you're going to get into some of those little nooks and crannies and get better adhesion. Okay. All right, now I have a little label here. This is just cut from very vanilla cardstock using the textured notes dies. And I'm going to come back with my early espresso ink and this little happy birthday sentiment from the Simply Said stamp set. And we're just going to add a little happy birthday here. There we go. And then just to bring a little bit of attention to this very small sentiment, we're going to add a sort of a botanical element. So this is more of this Earthen Tones metallic specialty paper, another product that is coming next week in the mini catalog. It's part of a mini catalog suite called Autumn Toile. Absolutely gorgeous. And as I just said, I love me some fall. So I have no problem ordering all the fall things. So we're going to adhere this to the back of our label here. So I'm going to kind of tuck it so that the leaf is kind of, or the branch is kind of coming behind the label, just like that. And then we're going to add some dimensionals and pop this onto our card. The big ones do fit. The minis fit more easily, but the big ones do fit. Add a couple of minis to my leaves there. And then we will pop this on. Come here, you. And I'm going to put this just a little bit above my twine. My twine's a little bit crooked. It moved when I was doing my gluing. There we go. And then I'm going to tie a little bow with my twine. And I'm going to iron it first because it's a little curly. Makes it hard to work with. So you just take your thumb and your bone folder, you just run it through, and then it's not so curly anymore. It's much, much easier to work with. So I'll take that, tie myself a little bow. And I'm going to keep my loops fairly large just because I'm only using a single thickness of twine. So I want it to have some presence on my card. And I've still got half a glue dot here from last week, which is rather convenient. So whenever I'm attaching a single layer bow that's made from twine, I use half a glue dot. And then you don't have quite as much volume and it doesn't peek out from behind the knot. Okay, and then our last touch is some of these metallic gems. These are in the annual catalog. I actually had used a whole bunch of them and forgotten about them. Was looking for a copper accent and I was like, where the heck are my copper accents? And realized that I needed to open a new pack. So there we go. Number 1 done. Isn't that simple and pretty? Oh yes, Lisa. I bought both bundles from the Autumn Toile. I absolutely love it. I'm actually doing a collaboration. You're going to want to be watching next week because I will be announcing a virtual class that will be available to both residents of Canada and the US. So I'm very, very excited about that. But there we go. That's our first project done. Let's get that out of the way. And we're going to move on to number 2. So number 2 looks like this. So totally different. Lots of color and light and soft. I love how versatile this embossing folder is. You can do so many things. You can do light and soft and airy, or you can do dark and tone on tone like I just did. So let me show you how I did this one. So the first one we used blending brushes. This one, we want a little bit more control. So we are going to use sponge daubers. Okay, so I started with just a piece. Here we go. Right, cut from it's a 4x5¼ inch piece of white cardstock that I've embossed using the Sunflowers embossing folder, and then we are going to start applying some ink. So I'm going to start with a little bit of crushed curry and my crushed curry dauber. I'm gonna bring all my daubers over. I got lots of them here. So I've already done 2 of the flowers just in the interest of time, because this does take a little bit of time. So I'm going to ink my dauber. I'm going to get rid of a bunch of the ink on my grid paper. And then I'm very lightly going to kind of brush up and outwards from the center of the sunflower. Again, I'm applying very little pressure. I'm just kind of letting the dauber dance across the embossed image. You don't want to press too hard because, number 1, we don't want to squish our embossing. And number 2, we don't want to get ink on our background. We only want ink on the embossed image. So we're just going to kind of dance across the embossing. And you see the parts that are more raised immediately get more ink because they're higher and I'm hitting them more often with my dauber. Okay, so there we go. Let's just see if we can get in a little bit closer there in the middle. I'm not worried about getting ink on that centerpiece because we're going to add some pecan pie to that, and that'll get rid of the yellow tones there. Okay, there's a little bit more flour here, so we're going to hit that up while we've got the crushed curry going. And there's a little bit of a flour here. Okay, next we're going to come in with a little bit of pumpkin pie. So we'll take our pumpkin pie ink pad and our pumpkin pie dauber. Now, people always ask me, every time I use daubers, they ask me if I have a dauber for each color, and that in fact, I do. Daubers are not something that you can really clean easily, and so I have a dauber for each color. They're all labeled. See, they've all got a little color label on it so I can keep track. Now, as I'm adding the pumpkin pie, I am using even less pressure than I used earlier, and I am really just kind of tickling the image because I don't want to cover the yellow completely, right? I just want a little hint of the pumpkin pie. If I go too heavy-handed, I'm not going to see that yellow anymore. Okay, and then our last step on the flowers is a little bit of crushed curry. Not crushed curry, Cajun craze. We use crushed curry already. It's another C word or C name. Cajun craze. Now this again is going to be very, very light. I'm really just trying to hit those parts of the image that are the most raised. So I'm just barely grazing the image. Okay, isn't that pretty? All right, so that is how we color the petals on the flower. To do the center, I'm going to come in with my pecan pie dauber. And again, I'm going to ink it up. I'm going to get rid of a bunch of the excess because remember, I just re-inked this. I'm going to start right in the center because if you've ever looked closely at a sunflower, you probably noticed that the center is the darkest. So if I'm going to have a dark splotch, the center is where I want it. And again, I'm just kind of working in a circular motion. I'm applying a little bit more pressure here because I do want to get ink into that sort of recessed part of the center there. Okay, I'm actually going to add a little bit more here. And I'm going to leave that one alone because that one, it's easy to go outside the lines, as they say. All right, so the last touch now is to do our green for the leaves. Now, this can be really tricky because the leaves are the most recessed part of the embossed image. So what I discovered in playing around with this folder is that I started with a really, really light green and then gradually built up the color. So I'm starting with some soft seafoam, and I'm going to start at the edge of this leaf. And I'm just going to kind of dance inwards. Again, not a lot of pressure. Just kind of grazing that embossed leaf. Okay, and now these ones are really tricky because they are very much in the background and they are not raised much at all. So you really have to use a very light touch and kind of come inwards from the edge of the leaf. And then there's another leaf in the background here, which you probably can't see very well, but it's there. All right, so there we go. And then these guys down here, it's easy when they're at near an edge because you can kind of come on and have sort of a little bit of a secure area where you can start each time. So we're just going to come in and around. So again, this is soft seafoam. I'm using a very, very light shade of green to start. And very little pressure. Again, there's another leaf back here, but it is almost recessed. It's very hard to ink this leaf without getting the petals of the flower. All right, so there we go. I just noticed I missed a petal back there, but we'll touch that up later. And now is where we're going to add a little bit of shadow. So this is where we want to be super, super careful. Okay, we're going to add a little bit of Mossy Meadow, but we're really only going to focus on the parts of the leaves that are not near the petals. So I'm kind of coming on here and adding a little bit of shadow. Ooh, that's too much, Lena. See, you need very little pressure here. But by having that light green, you don't feel like you need to go right into the edge of the leaf because you've already got a little bit of color there. Okay, this one is the trickiest one again because it's almost recessed. So I'm going to come in really, really lightly. And if you kind of turn your dauber on its side a little bit at a bit of an angle, you can kind of limit the amount of ink that you are applying. You have a smaller surface area that's actually contacting the paper. There we go. I need to hit that one little petal there. Hit it with a little bit of crushed curry. There we go. Done. Isn't that pretty? So easy to apply the ink and get a beautiful raised image. All right, so let's finish this one off now. So this, I wanted a really, really soft sort of look to this. So I'm going to layer this onto a 4 1/8 by 5 3/8 piece of soft seafoam cardstock. That was the same as the light shade of green that we used. So I'm going to apply some, again, liquid glue to make sure that I get into those nooks and crannies and not drop it on the floor. So we will just add that to our mat. So I'm going to flip this over because you do get inky fingers as you're working with daubers. And I don't want to get a big smear of ink on my card front. So if we flip it over, I can burnish it and not worry about that. Now we are going to stamp our sentiment. So our sentiment is getting stamped on a label, again, textured notes, cut from Basic Beige cardstock. And we're going to stamp our Thinking of You also from the Simply Said stamp set. We're going to stamp in Early Espresso on our itty bitty label here. Now you certainly could use a bigger label. I just didn't want to cover much of this beautiful image, all these gorgeous sunflowers. So most of my labels on our projects today are small because I wanted to show as much of the beautiful sunflowers as I could. Now to accentuate this little label, because it is small, we're going to add a little bit of twine. So what I like to do is put some seal on the back of my label, and then I'm going to take my linen thread here. This is just our regular natural linen thread. I'm going to wrap it around my fingers 3 or 4 times and then slide the loops off. I'm just going to kind of let them fall onto my label, stick them on so that they don't move. Okay, and then I can arrange them as I want. Sort of let them be kind of messy, just like that. Okay, a couple of dimensionals, and this will get held on to our card front. One, probably don't need 3, but this helps to secure the twine as well. So it's just an extra layer of adhesion there. And then this is going to go just in this corner where I can cover as few sunflowers as possible. And then that is going to get layered onto a basic beige card base, 5.5 by 8.5, scored at 4 1/4. So we will fold that in half along our score line. And again, this time I can use conceal because I'm not dealing with embossed cardstock. So we'll pop that on. I just love the softness of the light card base. It just really adds an airy quality to this look. And then our last touch is some pale yellow. These are the opal rounds from the annual catalog. Just these really soft yellow embellishments that look so pretty on our garden of sunflowers. And there we go. Isn't that nice? I love it. All right, now let me show you what I did on the inside. I took a piece of white cardstock. This is a 4 by 5 1/4 inch piece of white cardstock. I put it into the embossing folder, but only up about this. I had like it hanging out the end. Okay, so I put it in, well, you can see where I put it in, about that far. And then ran it through my machine. So I ended up with this beautiful embossed border at the bottom of my panel. And then I just did the same kind of ink blending technique that I did on the front. Way to make the front of the card as pretty as the inside of the card as pretty as the front. All right. Now we're going to get really messy. So if you think this is messy, just you wait. Here we go. This card, it did not turn out anything like I thought it would. In fact, when I first tried the technique, I was like, oh, this really isn't going to be nice. You're going to see what I mean in a minute. And then I just started adding ink and it was like this magic happened. And I absolutely love this card. This may be my favorite card I've made in quite some time. So let me show you how to get this look. It is so, so easy. So I have here, this is a half sheet of crushed curry cardstock. Okay. You can see it doesn't quite emboss the full 8.5 inch length. It's about 8 1/4, but it doesn't matter because we're going to cut this up. But the reason that I recommend cutting a big sheet like this, you're going to see in a minute. You need some place to hold on to that is not going to be covered in ink because we're going to get really, really messy. So this technique actually uses the deboss side. So we're going to flip this over. This is where the image is pressed in. Embossed is where the image is popped out. Debossed is pressed in. So we're using the deboss side. And I'm going to bring in my early espresso ink pad. Okay. Now this is super messy. Do not be alarmed. Don't adjust your computers. It's going to be gross. Okay. You ready for this? All right. So I'm going to just I'm right-handed. So I'm going to hold my paper with my left hand. I've got my ink pad open. Now it slides this way, right? To open. So I don't want to do it this way because I'm going to cause my ink pad to slide. So I'm going to flip it this way because that is going to go and keep it securely open. Okay. So I have the little lip here that I normally pull when I am inking or when I'm closing my pad, right? That's the little lip that I normally pull. Okay. So I want that. Hang on. Let me think about this. I got to think about what direction I'm doing this. I guess it doesn't matter. I was going to say, if I do it this way, yeah, no, it needs to be this way. Okay. So I want the little lip at the top. I had to think about that for a minute. I'm going to take my ink pad directly to my paper. Okay. So here we go. I'm just going to take, and you see how that catches? I'm just going to run this right across my cardstock. See how messy that is? It looks terrible. I want to cover the entire card front. Or the entire panel. If I see background parts, little background parts that are not covered, I want to make sure I hit those. I'm not pressing super hard because you see how I got some ink in there? I didn't really want to do that, but that's okay. All right, that's all there is to this. Okay, so that we start with this. Isn't that ugly? It's really ugly. Okay. Wow, I managed to come through that fairly unscathed. So you do need to give this time to dry. Okay, now I have the other half of the panel that I used to make the sample here. So we're going to use that because I know it's good and dry. So you do need to let this dry. You can hit it with a heat tool if you want to get it to dry out a little bit faster, but you do need to give it time to dry. Okay. All right. So I mentioned we were working on crushed curry cardstock. So I'm going to start with pumpkin pie ink and my dauber. So I'm going to ink up my dauber, and I'm just going to start applying ink to my petals. And I'm kind of going from the center outwards, but it honestly doesn't matter. You can kind of scrub back and forth. The only place you have to be careful is when you're kind of bordering a leaf, but that dark espresso background that we inked hides any of your other little missteps. It's quite forgiving. So I'm just coming in now and applying my ink. It's so easy. You do not have to be an expert colorer. You just need to have a little bit of dexterity to ink inside the petals with your dauber. And you can see there are a couple of areas where I hit it with the green. I'm just going to press a little bit harder to blend that out. And it's just going to work. It's amazing. So starting with that yellow, that rich crushed curry yellow, gives the entire thing this warm, rich sort of foundation that makes it really easy to apply and layer color on. Now there's a leaf here, so I'm just going to be careful. Get that little petal. And you can be as heavy-handed or not as you like. Depends how dark you want your ink to be, or your orange to be, I guess. And then we're going to come in and hit these petals. I'm just going to get up to the tips of these ones. Let's see if I can get them a little bit more color. There we go. Isn't that magical? So easy. All right, now, isn't it, Lisa? It's so amazing. Yes. All right, now let's try a little bit of pecan pie in the centers. So again, I'm just going to come in. And again, I'm going to press a little bit harder with my pecan pie because I want to get into those little grooves to get that as brown as I can. And this one as well. And then this is always the tricky one because it's sort of a little semicircle here. And we want to try and get as much of the center and as little of the leaves or petals as possible. There we go. And then the last touch, of course, is a little bit of mossy meadow for our leaves. Laura, having the recessed pattern, you don't have to have as much control. Yeah, it looks like I have more control than I do. But honestly, if you angle just a little bit and kind of, so you're coming at it a little bit crooked, it gives you more control over where you're putting your ink. And there we go. Isn't that gorgeous? So pretty. Now I need to experiment with different colors. So you could do this with any light colored cardstock and any dark colored ink, and you would get a different look, right? So I'm going to play around and experiment when I have more time. I know I'm retired. I should have more time, but right now I'm getting ready for my launch next week. So I don't have a lot of time right now. Okay, so we are going to add some of this pretty, it's called Irregular Weave trim that is also coming next week in the mini. We're just going to kind of run it over this big sunflower here. I'm going to very carefully and slowly apply a little bit of seal. It's not going to stick super well because I have wet ink here. Yeah, it's not sticking at all. Nope, it's too wet. It doesn't want to stick. Well, let's see what we can do. Maybe we'll use a glue dot. Where are you, glue dots? There you are. Seal does not like to apply to damp surfaces, just FYI, if you did not know that. And then we'll add another one on the back here, and that will be enough to secure it. Glue dots, they also don't especially like moisture, but they tend to be a little bit more forgiving than the seal. So there we go. Then we're going to add our label and our leaves. So this label is a new label set coming in the mini next week called Traditional Labels. So many pretty label dies in that one. And then I've heat embossed a sentiment from the Amber Autumn stamp set, another new one coming next week. And I've heat embossed it in copper, which is really pretty. Oh, too close. There you go. You can catch the sheen. Now, before we glue it, we're going to add a couple of leaves. These are from the Label Me Grateful dies that I featured last week or 2 weeks ago. I can't even remember now. So I'm going to add a couple of these little leaves here, just in Mossy Meadow cardstock. And then a couple of dimensionals. So 1, 2, 3. And we'll pop that on. I want to see some of my pretty trim there. And then that is going to get layered onto some pumpkin pie cardstock. I really wanted to make those flowers pop. So this is 4 1/8 by 5 3/8. And it is really going to make the color of those beautiful sunflowers really pop. So again, I'm applying liquid glue. Remember, the back side of this is embossed. So you really want to make sure you get good adhesion here. So liquid glue is your friend. So we'll pop that on. And then give it a good burnish. And then we will add it to an early espresso card base, 4 1/4 by 11, scored at 5 1/2. So we'll crisp that up. And we'll use some seal because we're not dealing with an embossed surface. And pop that on. And then I didn't bring let me grab my roll of trim here. So I'm going to show you how to work with this trim. So the trim, when you get it, you're going to find it's very stiff. It's starched. Okay. And it's really hard to tie a bow with. I got it and I was like, okay, I'm not going to love this. And then I was determined to be able to tie a bow with it. So I trimmed off a piece. This is about 1 foot, I guess. And I just started going at it with my bone folder and really kind of taking the starch out of it. And you can see it's curling just like paper would, right? But by working it just a couple of times with my bone folder, it takes the stiffness and starch out of it, and then it makes it really easy to tie a pretty little bow. So I'm going to make my loops. Now, the one thing that oh no, I guess I did a bunny ear bow. I was going to say I did a different style of bow, but I didn't. So I did my bunny ears. Now you do have to fight a little bit to size your loops because the irregular weave does catch. So you've got to kind of really work at it a little bit. But once you do, you got a cute little bow. See that? Easy peasy. The leaf dies, Lisa, are from the Label Me Grateful dies, a bundle. It's another online exclusive that I featured. I can't remember if it was last week or the week before. I think it was the week before. Well, maybe it was last week. I don't know. It's all a blur. I'm just going to go ahead and add a glue dot to the knot of my bow. If you check back on my channel, you will see the Label Me Grateful dies there. And then we're going to add just some of these warm brown. They're called streaked dots, which is not the most pretty name, but they're really pretty embellishments. I did do a bundle on that. Thank you for your kind words about it. I did do a bundle. I did do a video on that bundle. Yes. It's a great bundle. Very versatile and very reasonably priced. We like reasonably priced. There we go. Added a few embellishments and we're golden. Isn't that pretty? I just love, so there you go. You can see that this is cut from one big long sheet. On the inside, I just stamped a sentiment, did a little bit of an ink spatter, and that's it. So let me show you. You know what? I'm going to get rid of my very inky grid paper here. And then I will bring back all of our projects. So here we go. We got 1, we got 2, we got 3, and then I got more to share with you. All right. So this one is a technique here. I've actually got a panel that I haven't finished yet. So this is similar to, well, it's not really similar. No, I lied. This is just embossed on Crumb Cake, but then I hit it with white craft ink and a dauber and hit all of my raised surfaces again. Then I applied my colors. So you can see on here, I applied crushed curry and a little bit of pumpkin pie and my mossy meadow and early espresso for the centers. And then I added detail with watercolor pencils. And it just adds, it makes the flowers look that much more lifelike when you add that extra little bit of shading. So that's how I did that one. And then here's another one. This one, I fussy cut some of the flowers from the embossed image and colored them with my Stampin' blends. So much more vibrant. So used Daffodil Delight, Mossy Meadow, and one of the natural tones. I can't remember which one, a darker brown. The background on this is embossed using another new product. It's another online exclusive coming on next week. So again, check out the online exclusives on Wednesday. And then this one I posted yesterday. So this is a similar technique to the whitewash technique. So this is Secret Sea cardstock that I then hit with my white craft ink. Again, just with a dauber, and then just layered it on some crushed curry. I did add some Wink of Stella. I don't know if you can see the shimmer on there, but it does shimmer quite nicely. And then this one, I wanted to show you. This is a gatefold. So this is a mirror image gatefold. Can you see how this side, I have the debossed side up. So I inked in white the raised portion of this. So the image is not inked. And then on this one, this is the embossed side. So I inked the raised image on this one. So when I open this, you can see it's like a mirror image. And then when I open this, I've got mirror image on the inside as well. So again, debossed, embossed. Now that brings me to this pretty little stamp. Let me show you a new stamp set that is coming and tell you about a promotion that I'm offering. So we have a new stamp set. It is our Giveback stamp set that is coming in the new mini catalog. October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month. And this stamp set is our Stampin' Up's Giveback. So the $4 from the sale of every Love and Courage stamp set will go towards breast cancer research. So I love this stamp set. I love the sentiments. Friends don't let friends fight cancer alone. It's okay to not be okay. There's also lovely sentiment for those who want to send thank yous to those who support them in their cancer battle. Just lovely, lovely. But look at this beautiful sunflower here. So that's where this image came from. And that inspired me to offer anyone who purchases this stamp set, once the catalog goes live next week, will receive a PDF tutorial with step-by-step instructions to make 4 cards. So let me show you the 4 cards that are included in the PDF. So we have this one here. So pretty. And then we have this one. This uses that same whitewash technique. And then we have this one, which uses some of our two-tone cardstock. And then finally, this one. So you'll get a PDF tutorial for all 4 of those cards for free when you purchase the Love and Courage stamp set. Okay. So I will be offering that starting next week once the catalog goes live. in the hopes of selling lots of stamp sets and raising lots of money for cancer research. All right. Okay, everyone, let me get back to me. Yes, Lisa, I am Canadian. I am. I would say unfortunately, but I'm really proud to be Canadian. So. All right. Lisa, I will probably look at offering a tutorial only option. Let me work on that one. I want to make sure that money from the tutorial goes to cancer research. So I need to work out what I need to charge to make sure that I can make a donation to cancer research. So stay tuned. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you loved these projects. I had so much fun with this folder. You should see my desk. It was a disaster zone. There was ink everywhere, paper towel. I had blending brushes. It was just a disaster zone. My fingers were a mess, but it was so much fun to play with this folder. So I hope you enjoyed these. Check out this folder. If you haven't yet picked it up, I would grab it sooner than later because it's going to probably sell out again. It's sold out twice already. So with online exclusives, we never know if they're going to keep ordering more. So I would suggest picking it up sooner than later. Okay. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me today. Have a great week. Now, next week, I will not be live on Tuesday. Nope. It's the first Tuesday of September. I will be live in prime time on Wednesday at 7 p.m. Eastern time for my live launch party for the new Holiday Mini and online exclusive. So you'll want to join me. It's 2 hours of jam-packed product showcases and make and takes and prizes, and it's just lots of fun. So plan to join me Wednesday, September 3rd. 3rd? Yes, 3rd. I keep getting my dates mixed up. It's bad. I'm retired. I have to worry about what day I have to be in school. September 3rd at 7 p.m. Mountain Time. Okay. I will see you all then. Have a great week and enjoy whatever the season's weather throws at you this week. Bye for now.